to Bad Movie Beatdown. Now, it's been long overdue that I do a bad adaptation or a bad remake, and thankfully today's target ticks both of those boxes. The 2002 version of The Time Machine. Now, back in 1885, H.G. Wells wrote a great piece of literature called The Time Machine. The novel was essentially about cultural division and its consequences. Said book was then adapted into a film in 1960 by George Powell, which, although dated, still holds up for many people. But of course, old is new in the eyes of Hollywood, who promptly made another adaptation in 2002. I say adaptation, it's actually completely different to the original source material, even thematically. So who was the man in charge of this total bastardisation? H.G. Wells' great-grandson Simon Wells, of course. You'd think that an ancestor of the Wells line would keep the story intact, wouldn't you? Alas, nope. This is Wells' first, and to date only, live-action movie he's actually directed. In fact, he's more known for his animated features, which we'll look at now. That's not a good start, but keep going. Egads! Meh. Well, that's a little bit better. Yeah, I wouldn't have very high expectations if I were you. So we're introduced to our protagonist, Alexander Hannigan, played by Guy Pearce, who's so wrapped up in science that he nearly forgets his date with Emma, played by Sienna Guillory. And you know what else? He's ahead of his time.
You might want to play things a little more conservatively.
You, all alike, all in identical bowler hats. Do you want your students to turn out like that? I want them to run along this street and knock off every bowler they see.
Great! First comment I make and you can already guess the ending. What brilliant screenwriting. And just in case that's too subtle, look what's in his lab! Seriously, is there a single major scientific breakthrough he hasn't come up with yet? He's even invented the electric toothbrush. Also, I think you might also want to consider the patent for the modern battery that appears to be powering it, since 1800 batteries were bricks. By the way, his best friend is Philby, played by Mark Addy. Philby, for those who haven't read the book, was a somewhat cynical man at the lecture the time traveller gave in the book. Yeah, they pretty much took a random character name and applied it to someone else. You must be thinking, wait, lecture? Yes, the original book had a framing device that the time traveller was giving his discoveries to fellow dinner guests. In London, not New York as in the film.
He's a patent clerk, not a bookkeeper, and I think Mr. Einstein deserves all the support I can give him.
Filmmakers, Einstein was still in the education system in 1899, he hadn't become a patent clerk yet. Oh dear. So he goes on his date with Emma and proposes to her, in one of the least romantic ways possible.
I think there's only one remedy, and that's for you to marry me and spend the rest of your life with me.
Look at him stare out into the distance like that. He looks like a fish gasping for air. Unfortunately, a charming mugger comes along. What a wonderful place to mug people, in a park next to some ice skaters. Instead of calling for help or shouting, "Mugger!" they proceed to get robbed. Unfortunately, the mugger tries to take the ring, which Alex struggles with him for, only to end up getting Emma shot. Just as he proposed. So now, instead of the time traveller just having a curiosity about travelling into the future, he wants to change the past for personal gain. Congratulations, you just made the protagonist selfish. So 4 years later, and Alex is obviously a mess. Look at him, his hair's messy and he's unshaven. That's just hideous.
This is what it says you're in here all hours, day and night. Alex, will you please stand still and look at me? It wasn't your fault.
Odd how he didn't place the blame on the mugger who had the gun when it discharged. He manages to shrug off his friend Philby and we get teased the reveal of the time machine itself. And I have to say, it does look really impressive. Given it was the most expensive prop of all time when the film was released, it bloody well better be. However, that is stupid. The production design obviously went to a lot of effort to make the machine look like it was built in the time period, and the special effects department have completely ballsed that up by sticking a bunch of random glowy blue things on it. So Alex goes back in time to the night of the shooting. Alex is awestruck by Emma having lost her. He manages to rush the hell out of the park and tells her to go home.
But first, where are my flowers?
If I was in that situation, I wouldn't let them out of my sight just in case something happened to them. Like this. Oh bugger. Thanks to the idea to put her in the background like that, what should be tragic is now rendered hilariously funny. Congratulations.
I could come back 1,000 times. See her die 1,000 ways.
Bear in mind, he comes to this conclusion after one try, not several. I know the filmmakers were avoiding lapsing into comedy, which they kind of failed at, but dude, you have a time machine! Try, and try again. Of course, anyone who has seen the Back to the Future movies or has a passing interest in sci-fi knows exactly why Alex can't change the future. Which means the main plot will be boring to everyone but Rolo T. He decides to travel into the future and we get their big special effects sequence now. As it turns out, the blue thingies create a protective sphere around the machine. Yeah, that looks a bit advanced for 1903 tech, doesn't it? This may seem like I'm nitpicking, but how the time machine works or functions is never really explained. We're just meant to assume. I guess this is because it gives them free rein to change the rules as the plot goes along. Wouldn't holding his arm outside the fear cut his hands off? He should be going, ah, my nails. He should be going, ah, my hand! Oh god, my hand! The sequence climaxes with a zoom out revealing a lunar colony based on the moon. Fascinated by an advertisement, Alex stops by in 2030.
But that makes a hell of a cappuccino.
And Thomas, if you do that again, I will resequence your DNA, so help me.
And apparently the writer was a monkey who had his DNA changed into a human. And then, just to show it's bloody modern, we meet a holographic librarian named Vox, played by an annoying Orlando Jones.
Welcome to Vox System.
Tell me about the time machine.
No, don't break fourth wall, please.
Time Machine was written by H.G. Wells in 1894. It was later adapted to a motion picture by George Powell and a stage musical by Andrew Lloyd Webber, which ran on Broadway for 23 years. Would you like to hear selections from the score?
No.
There's a place called Tomorrow.
Do you remember when libraries were silent?
Not of sorrow, can't you see? It's a place for you.
Live long and prosper.
Alex tries to ride further into the future, but something shakes him. Isn't that sort of thing what the sphere is supposed to protect him from? So in the space of 7 years, the world has turned into a shit heap. Why? Because they blew up the moon. Whilst this is a bad thing for humanity, I think we can take comfort in the fact that Pluto Nash does not exist in this timeline.
Very sorry, James, you're too late. I have disconnected your alarm relay.
He manages to get away from some cops who want to bring him into an underground colony and back into the machine. The impacts rock him into unconsciousness. Wow, that's a great protective sphere. So again we get some nice special effects shots as the Earth reforms and regrows. An ice age happens and again the protective sphere does nothing to protect from the cold. This doesn't make any sense. Isn't the whole purpose of the sphere to protect the user from external stimuli that might harm or age them? Alex comes to his senses temporarily and stops the machine. Look how many bars he placed on the machine's year count. 9 bars! How far was he planning on travelling then? Anyway, he stops on the year 820,701. Alex is cared for by some friendly Eoli. When he wakes up, he's in for quite a shock. A new civilization. Now, what would be the most logical place for a tribal civilization to live? Teepees? Tents? Try the side of a cliff. I'm sorry, what the hell? Are we supposed to buy that they live on cliff faces? How did they build them? Plausibility, as you might have guessed, has been wiped out by the moon breakup.
I'm sorry, I don't understand you.
Do you know my words?
Ugh. Special points for going away from the book and being implausible. The Eoli didn't speak English in the original book because it was thousands of years old. It was a dead language. I'm sorry, but English wouldn't be spoken at this point at all.
Forget. They forget it. But I teach.
Convenient. This is Mara, played by Samantha Mumba in her feature film debut. She's okay, I guess, but she doesn't really get to do that much. That's probably for the best.
You were right, Philby. We did go too far.
I'm sorry, but how is the moon staying in orbit like that? So now we've reached the really boring part of the movie. It's one thing to make changes, it's another thing to take an interesting story and make it boring, but somehow they've managed it. So what do we learn? we learn that they teach English from old rock signage. That makes no sense. They wouldn't be able to know what the words meant. They build windmill thingies to remember the dead. Right. And eventually, Mara takes him to the time machine. She asks Alex to take Kalen, her brother, played by Samantha's real-life brother, Amuro, back to his time. I'm pretty sure a black person would be treated fairly in the early 20th century. Oh, wait. But a horn sounds, it's the Morlocks! The Morlocks mark people with ink darts so the others can capture them. Is it me, or do the Morlocks look and throw people like professional wrestlers? It turns out Kalen is marked and Alex goes and attacks a Morlock. So we have a big fight scene on the big windmill thingy. Unfortunately, whilst he saves Kalen, the Morlocks take Mara.
Where do they take them? No. We have to follow them. We have to find them. We do not call Quintor. No. Why not? This is Nemiloitas. Our life here. How can you just do nothing?
Wow, the Eoli are really quite good at English considering they've forgotten it. Alex convinces Kalen to take him to the Morlock hideout. On the way...
Welcome to Vox System. Oh, I'm sorry. The lending library is temporarily out of service.
Oh, sod off. Yes, Vox is back. Somehow he is still hanging around after 700,000 years. That's impressive. Even more impressive when you ponder what the hell he's running on, since there's obviously no electricity.
But I believe what was once one race is now two. One above and one below.
He explains the breathtakingly obvious, offering exposition that will be explained later anyway. Thanks for showing up. So Alex reaches the entrance.
I lost your pocket watch. They took it from my room.
Wait a second, if the Morlocks can sneak in at night, why don't they take people in their sleep? Oh, right, because we wouldn't have an action scene. It's interesting to note that at this point the direction switches over to Gore Verbinski. Yes, that Gore Verbinski who went on to make Pirates of the Caribbean. What happened was that Simon Wells, not used to live action movies, came down with stress and had to be replaced for the rest of the shoot. This is particularly prominent in this scene, where Alexander is startled by meat hooks and other cutting devices before falling into a sea of bones and flesh, which is quite grisly. And yes, this is a tone shift. So Alex gets captured and taken to the Uber Morlock's lair, where Mara is being kept. The Uber Morlock, a totally fabricated for the film character played by Jeremy Irons, then goes and explains the plot for over 5 minutes. If you're going to have an extended dialogue scene, you better do it well. It isn't, as you might have guessed, it's boring. Half of it is what Vox already hinted at, and probably the worst thing is Jeremy Irons. Irons doesn't embarrass himself by overacting like in Dungeons and Dragons, because his very appearance is an embarrassment. I mean, just look at him. Bright white, as is his hair, tinted eyes, his brain runs down his spine. He looks like a mutant Ozzy Osbourne dripped in bleach. As if this weren't bad enough, the filmmakers obviously loved their Star Trek, since the character is virtually identical to the Ball Queen in First Contact. Their appearance is very similar, their role is similar. The concept I can deal with, but ripping off the appearance, that's low.
We bred ourselves into castes.
Congratulations, you managed to dilute the social message that H.G. Wells was aiming at. Top notch.
This is a perversion of every natural law.
And what is time travel but your pathetic attempt to control the world around you? Your futile effort to have a question answered.
Well said, Uber Morlock. I think I like him.
She had lived, but never have existed. So how could you use your machine to go back to save her?
A time paradox! That's what we've come all this way for, a time paradox. How dull.
You are the inescapable result of your tragedy. Just as I am the inescapable result of you.
Yeah, science is bad, we should never advance! With his question answered, the Uber Morlock brings down the time machine. Wait, how did they move it? That thing looks pretty heavy, so much so that I even doubt a bunch of Morlocks could carry it.
You have your answer. Now go.
I believe you have something that belongs to you.
We all have our time machines, don't we? Those that take us back, our memories. And those that carry us forward. A dream.
Okay, I gotta hand it to the movie here. It may be crap, but that's a brilliant line. But we've spent too much time talking, so how about a fight scene inside the time machine? Just what HG wanted. So the Uber Morlock ends up being suspended out of the machine, hanging onto Alexander, who is holding onto the lever. Okay, this would mean the machine is off. There should be no bubble protecting them. In fact, they should be falling since the ground's receded. See what I mean about changing how the machine works to fit the plot? Alexander turns on the machine and the Uber Morlock CGI ages out of existence. Even though technically it should have cut his hands off. Oh well. Alex eventually stops in 365,427,810. Good thing he had 9 number wheels! It turns out it's a crappy future where Morlocks rule the world, and presumably starve since they've hardly got any food sources. Alex returns to free Mara. He then puts his watch into the time machine, which turns it into a time bomb. Time bomb? Who writes this shit? Yes, Alexander has gone from nerdy eccentric scientist to action hero in about 90 minutes. This isn't a character arc because this completely comes out of nowhere. So we get a race before shit blows up chase sequence. Yes, the time machine blows up and sends some sort of time wave that ages everything super fast. Why? Because the plot says so and we need an explosion. So with those pesky Morlocks out of the way, we can get the happy ending that H.G. Wells always was intending to close the book with. What do you mean the book's ending was ambiguous? So we get Vox reading a book to the children in the English classroom, somehow functioning away from his memory core. Oh, who cares anymore? I love how this bit is promoting literature, the same literature the film insulted in the most heinous way possible for the last 90 minutes. So we close with this nice scene of Alex showing them where his house was, whilst Philby comes by to see that he is gone. As he walks away, Philby throws away his hat. This certainly isn't the H.G. Wells novel in any shape or form. It's not even that I have a problem with, it's the fact it's not even Wells' message. At least keep intact the original spirit. They simply made some crappy little sci-fi flick about time travel and slapped a name on it. It's a terrible, terrible adaptation, a true bastardization. The issue is not the film was remade, but the fact that the film had so much potential. This isn't even the worst film featured on this programme by far, but it's still a bad movie just managing to turn a literary great into a boring and idiotic action film. H.G. should be doing cartwheels in his grave about now. Simon Wells hasn't directed anything since, although he is working on an animated feature out next year called Mars Need Moms. Let's hope it's nothing like We're Back. Personally, I wish I could time travel so I could prevent this movie from existing, but unfortunately I've got to settle for quantum leaping. So until the next leap, I'm Matthew Buck, beating down bad movies everywhere.